Hi, Guido Fox here. Welcome by a new book report. Today I want to discuss with you this book, Complex PTSS, Traumatic Experiences, how to deal with it, how to dissolve it, how to heal from traumatic experiences. It's around 300 pages of information, more than 300 pages of information from Pete Walker. Standard work if you want to know more about traumas, traumatic experiences, and how to heal from it, how to dissolve it, how to know about it. All those mind trash who is into your mind, who is thinking about this traumatic experience in the past. It's difficult, and a lot of people are dealing with it, and from a traumatic experiences or more experiences, you can also create mental diseases, psychological difficulties, and a lot of people have had to deal with it, have to deal with these traumatic experiences all their lives. They wake up with it and they go on and sleep with it, right? It is all day long, night long. They think about negative events in their lives, and that is horrible because you want to live right. You want to live your life. You want to live a peaceful, mind peaceful, ecstatic life. And this shit is disturbing you. It's disturbing you in your relationship. It's disturbing you in your work. It brings you to your friends. It disturbs your relationship. So it is very important that we talk here about traumatic experiences. And I want to start with Pete Walker himself, the guy who wrote this book. And he talked about his youth, about his disturbed relationship with his parents. And he said, I escaped from the angriness and the disappointedness about life from my parents. And the most traumatic experiences are happening in the youth, and maybe later in your work and in your relationship dynamics. But the youth is very, very, very important for traumatic experiences. And a great part of your youth, if your family dynamics, is how your parents are growing you up. I said, with controlling elements, with fights between them. Is it with punishing, with emotional abusement, with pressuring elements, or it is love and freedom and caringness and supportiveness over there. So how your parents were dealing with each other is also an example for you and your relationship in the future. And this has to be understood, is that the raising up is such an important factor in your personal development, and it is mostly in the first 3-4 years are very, very important in your life, and the coming 20 to 25 years that you live by your parents, you will be shaped. You will be shaped not only by the matrix, but also by your matrix parents. And they shaped by their parents. They transfer the wounds from their parents to you as a child. And a lot of parents don't know how to raise up children, or didn't have a raising up coach, or read books about raising up material. So they don't know. A lot of parents don't know how to do it, how to bring peace and love and do the corrections on a nice way. And it is very difficult to escape from parental conditionings. Your parents can be a disturbing factor in your life. For grow, to start maybe your own business, to choose another life than normal people. Your parents can be overreactive, can be over caring. And a lot of times I see that the influence of your parents are not good for growing. And then we have to go to reparenting. Reparenting by a coach, by a life coach, to vanish, to dissolve the distractions of your parents, the transferring distractions, what your parents are told to you, what your parents were thinking that is good for you. But your parents didn't do anything about personal development, didn't read books about it. We're living in totally other area, other decade, other time. So your parents have not the knowledge what we now can have, what's available for us. So this guy, Pete Walker, escaped from the angriness of his parents, the unhappiness of his parents, said goodbye because he was verbally and emotional abused. Verbally and emotional. Two things. You can be emotional, disturbed by neglect of your parents. They didn't give a shit about you. Emotional abusement, or verbally. They talk to you in a very bad way, on a very low spiritual frequency. So your parents can also be disturbed in verbally, and every time you go to bed, every time you wake up, maybe I'm in the overdrive now, but you remember the voices, the behavioral patterns of your parents. And it's a big problem because in rich research in 2014, 1 out 3 and 1 out 5 children were sexual abused. So that's the hardest thing, sexual abusement. 1 out 3 of women, 1 out 5 of men in the United States. That means that the normal abusement, the emotional abusement and the verbal abusement towards children are even more than that. Let's say 50%. So traumatic experiences from that source in the youth. And 26% of people of age more than 18 are develop a psychological disorder in America. 26% have a psychological disorder. 1 out 4 develop that from traumatic experience sourced and based in the youth development. So there are very shocking counts, very shocking numbers here. And from the verbally and emotional sexual abusement, eating disorders will exist. Overeating, but also anorexia. And there is no healthy connection with food and also a lot of stress in your life, so that can make you or extreme skinny, and you have self-punishment, or you eat your emotions away and put yourself full with food. So there's an overdrive there to eat your emotions, try to eat your emotions away. So that's what you see in the relationship with food. If your relationship with food is not good, that means mostly that there are traumatic experiences in the youth. Um, that is the pre-work of Pete Walker. That was the first pages of some information about traumatic experience and PTSS. So page 15, one of the things is also related to abusement, and that is neglect. The neglect of your parents. They are there in the house, but actually they are not there. And they are not full consciousness by the raising up of their children. So they are there. They're maybe to work. They're coming home. They're doing their own thing, and they're not fully energized by their children. Even a short quality time is enough, right? Or ask questions and really ask from inner motivation, from inner drive, from really interested in your child. So not how was going today, no, how is going today? What did you learn? What did you feel today, right? This kind of questions. So really be there for your children is not anymore from these days. And neglect and don't see your children there, not bring up a connection there, or try to get a connection there, or a relationship with a mother-father day, a mother-daughter day, or a father and son day, that you really create a connection with your parents. That is so important for the raising up of your children, that you can talk also one-to-one to them, and that they can share, and that they can share their emotions, and that they can trust their parents, that they can share their emotions. So that is interesting and also important for our future generation, that the 26% of the people have no psychological disorder or psychological consequences from the upbringing in the youth. So neglect. So parents are not there for the children. They're physical there, but mentally not there, is a very big thing in the traumatic experiences from children, and they bring it, of course, later on in their life. They get shit out. They get shit out of it. And what kind of shit? 3 things happened with children who are abused in their youth, who didn't get the warm peace and love from the parents. And that first one is toxic shame. Toxic means that it is shame, but also shame for a lot of times in between. So a lot of times you're feeling ashamed. So toxic shame about yourself, your self-image. You don't want to be on it earth. You're feeling yourself useless. Your parents didn't give you the self-confidence you needed. And there's shame about yourself, about your functioning in this world. And that leads also towards self-neglect. So you You decline yourself. You don't accept yourself how you are. So the neglect of your parents will be transferred to self-neglect. That's an interesting point, right? So the neglect of your parents will be transferring towards self-neglect, self-rejection. You reject yourself. You punish yourself constantly because you're used to get punished. I talk with you later about repetition compulsion. Well, that's the two things: toxic shame, self-neglect, and the third one is social fears. You create social fears because you couldn't trust your parents. So if you cannot trust your parents, how can you trust the other? How can you trust the world if you cannot trust your parents? If you cannot relate to your parents? So all the wars starts within the family. Therefore, my teacher Osho was also against the family. Against the family, grow fast to reparenting, to wise life coaches, to wise teachers, reparenting. All the wars starts in the family. Very wise if you can see the matrix, the dysfunctioning of the matrix. Social fears, self-neglect and toxic shame. Next one, emotional flashbacks. Yeah, that's a part of traumatic experience, right? And a certain moment I talk about solutions, and there's a lot of talks to put it out. And meditation, opening up, 7 chakra awakenings, everything will purifying, will dissolving in the inner line of ecstaticness in your body. And talk about experiences to dissolve it and become fresh inside. Emotional flashbacks, that's a typical sign, sweaty in the night in the bed, you wake up, oh my god, what happened here, right? So emotional flashbacks, that's a big part of traumatic experience. Then you know that you have a trauma if that happenings that you're constantly thinking about as negative things and wake up in the night sweaty and or think about it all the time. That is traumatic experiences, and that is also the downplaying on page 102. He mentioned that. The downplaying. Don't downplay your trauma. Accept your trauma. Accept it, because then we can go to solution. Don't go fully in your work and neglect your trauma. Escaping your work. No. Downplay your trauma. Downplay. Accept your trauma fully to dissolve. And mourning, you grieve, mourning, accept your trauma and mourning. You can be unhappy with it. You can let your tears coming about your traumatic experiences. You can Let your tears coming. What happened with you in your youth? Mourning is very essential. You can let your tears, you can feel the pain of it, to let it come through your system. And because through your system you can heal, you can dissolve your trauma. Through this toxicity in your system, you create abundant attachment depressions. You will be afraid to lose your relationship, to lose your job, to lose your friends. Your life will be a life of afraidness because your parents neglect you. So there was a losing in your life. You didn't have your parents close to you. They didn't were there. So there is some bonding, relationship, disease in your inner system and disorder. So in disorder and relationship disorder, what leads to an mouse, cat, fight, flight relationship, an unstable relationship with the cause of insecurity because you never bond with your parents. So also in relationship, not only wars starts and distrust to each other starts in the family, but also the disturbed relationship with the other is also shaped in the matrix family system. And that leads to depression, the depression of bonding or not able to bond, and leaving depression, and also to 4 mechanisms of survival, page 27. And that is fight, flight, freeze, and feign. Feign. Fight is that you're going to have constantly conflict with your environment. So, a kind of narcissistic fight will be a mechanism of survival. I was there a lot of times. So one of the survival mechanisms is fight. You're gonna fight. You can also go to flight. Then you fly away from everything, from every emotional bonding, from every people who can give critics about you because you're insecure, you cannot handle the critics, and you fly away. So fight, flight, and freeze is that you're freeze stiff in your shoulders and you stand still when actually doing nothing. So if you get critics or your employee or something saying to you, you will be freeze and scared, and you'll go into failure, the fear of failure. So that is freeze, you will be stiff. And the latest one is a new one in the survival mechanisms, that is feign. And feign means that you're gonna go into please behavioral patterns. So you're gonna please everyone in your surroundings, you're gonna please because you're afraid to lose them, you're afraid for yourself, you're insecure. So from that reason, you go into feign mechanisms. You're going in please behavioral patterns. If you're going into flight, you're mostly going also in obsessive compulsive behavioral patterns in perfectionism and workaholic behavior, and that's also the case with narcissistic fight. So if you're going in fight and flight, you're mostly going into workaholic behavior, perfectionism, self-punishment, and obsessive compulsory in the control modus. Because if you're fight, you want to control, but also if you want to fly away from yourself and your circumstances, you're also in control because you want to control what is not can be controlled. So you fly away from control. You want to control your freedom and not your bonding. You're scared for bonding, so you want to control your freedom. I want to have my freedom, so I'm not bonding with others. So that's the flight survival mechanism. If you're more in freeze and vain, you're more in codependency relationship, and you're going more in pleasing behavioral patterns. That's sort of survival mechanisms you can create for yourself, what is coming from traumatic experiences. Page 30. And that's also mostly the case, is also that your brothers and sisters probably have also traumatic experiences. Not only you, but also your relatives, your father, mother, brother, sister. So the whole family dynamic is kind of disturbed, is kind of toxic. So probably your brothers or sisters, the relationship with your brothers and sisters are also not good there. I talked already with you a little bit about the repetition compulsion, and that is that you are used to get punished by your father and mother, and by yourself later, self-punishment, and then you create a lot of situations for yourself that it's similar. It's a similar situation of yourself in the past, and you're searching for similar situations because you're used to be in that toxic dynamic, in that toxic prison, and you lock yourself constantly up in punishment prisons for yourself. So that's interesting, right? So and that's why people also addicted to pain and misery. If you read Osho, because everyone is addicted to pain and misery and stay in pain and misery because it is a kind of usement. You used to be there. You used to get punished. It is familiar for yourself. It is you recognize the patterns, and because you recognize the negative patterns, I recognize this behavior. I feel safe by it, but that's kind of not safe for yourself. It is not safe for yourself. It is a false safety to step always in those toxic dynamics. Page 38, that is the inner and the outer critic. And if you are punished by your parents, or you have traumatic experience on another way, you will not only create an inner critic version about yourself, but also an outer critic. And that is interesting. So you're gonna look to the world with an outer critical look. So as you say, oh my god, this guy is nasty, or oh, this woman is not good, or I don't like her clothes, or she is dumb. So if your inner critic is always related to your outer critic, and that's what you see, and that is what you that's what you see. You see that the inner critic is always related to your outer critic. Then you have to dissolve your page 38. You have to dissolve your superego, and your superego is actually doing what your parents want from you. So the indoctrination and the parenting conditioning from 20 to 25 years in-house, and mostly there's also out-house connection when you leave the house, but your superego is related to the wishes of your parents, and that's that you searching for a decent guy or a woman because your parents like that, or you choose someone who's similar with your mother, your father, or your career path is dependent on what your father and mother did in their lives. So that's what you see a lot of times, that you shaped by your matrix parents, and you do what they want or expect from you. And that's the superego. Actually, is their kind of vain. And you want to please your parents. You want to be a good doer. You want to be a good doer for your parents. So please your parents over there. Page 49, about mourning. I told you, let your tears come, right? Let your tears come. Share it to the world. Share it to the world. You can do that for a time of period to let it go. Let your trauma dissolve. Let it come out. Let it come out. And you create a new life. A new life. So, sta jezelf toe in Dutch. Give yourself the time to heal the wounds and let it out of it. Page 70 is reparenting, and that's a very interesting new phenomenon, and that's the new world, it's the new centuries, is reparenting, and that's necessary. If you see all the wars and toxicity of behavioral patterns, the family is not good for you, no way. We have to go into reparenting and search for your spiritual life coach. Therefore, there are also so many coaches. It's a new world, a new century. So we step out the family dynamics and create more healthy mind solutions. And we go into reparenting. And one of the things I mentioned there, what I found interesting, was on page 70, is self-compassion. If you have not self-compassion, no self-love, no self-confidence, your mother did a good job there. If you're not a lot of self-confidence and self-worth, your mother did not a good job there. If you're not a lot of self-protection, you cannot set borders to your friends, to your relationship, to yourself. You say, hey, I want to do this, I want to strive for that. Hey, I don't like that you do that, right? You set borders there. If you cannot do that, then the father was not there in your youth, or learn to do that, to set borders, to protect yourself. So self-compassion and self-protection are really, really, really good things to know in your life, and it's related to each other. So self-compassion and self-protection are really interesting. Otherwise, you're going into fear patterns because you lose control about yourself. You cannot protect yourself, so you will be fear. If you can protect yourself, there's no fear. So you go into fear because there's no protection, and then you go into that survival mechanisms, and you create attachment disorders in yourself. So don't downplay your traumatic experiences. Don't downplay it. Work on it, and go to a life coach to raise your consciousness up, to dissolve this complex PTSS, these traumatic experiences. Thank you for watching. I see you by the next book report. Bye bye.